Humor and magic. And here's your host, Andrea.
Hey y'all, and welcome to this week's episode. I'm really having fun doing this, so as long as y'all keep listening, I'll keep doing this. I finally got one of my offspring talked into joining me today, so my son Alex is with us today.
Hello, I have arrived.
Alright, so before we go, deep into today's episode, I want to give a little update to the news story I mentioned a couple of episodes ago. If you didn't hear it, to make a longish story short, at the beginning of this month, a group of friends were out riding ATVs when they stopped at a house that they had heard that was haunted. They wanted to explore it. Well, while they were in there, they found a body in a freezer on the back porch. Then 2 days later, the house burned down. And now, about a week ago, the sheriff's department released a picture of a tattoo found on the victim's right shoulder. I'll post a link to the news story with a picture of the tattoo on the Facebook page if you'd like to go take a look. Now, this tattoo appears to be a portrait, so it wouldn't be a tattoo that just anybody would have. They also say that the victim is male, and he was wearing size 34 PacSun blue denim stacked skinny jeans, a short sleeve t-shirt, and a brown belt. Now, if you have any tips or can identify this victim, you're urged to call the Orangeburg County Sheriff's Office at 803-534-3550 or Crime Stoppers at 1-888-CRIME-SC. And I hope, I'll have another update for this soon.
The whole thing sounds kind of strange, though, to be honest.
It really does. 2 days after they find the body, the house burns down. But hopefully they get it all figured out. So today we're going to be talking about urban legends right here in our home state of South Carolina. There's a few that I'm familiar with, but then I came across a couple that I'd never heard of until I started doing the research for this episode. Now, have any of y'all ever heard of Boo Hags? That was one that was new to me. So today we're talking about Boo Hags, the Lizard Man, and a few others that I found very interesting. So we're going to start things off with the Lizard Man, and I'm starting with him because at the time that he was the talk of the state, I was obsessed with him. Now, that was around 1988, I believe, and I was a junior in high school. That's when the first sighting of the Lizard Man was reported. A 17-year-old boy, now that's your age, Alex. He says he stopped to change a tire, and without warning, the Lizard Man came charging right out of the swamp and attacked the car. The boy jumped back into his car to get to safety, but the Lizard Man ripped off a mirror and he gouged the roof of the car. Now, this took place down in Bishopville, which is in the going toward the coastal area of our state, and it was near the Scape or swamp. Now, if that had been you, what would you have done? I mean, he was your age.
To be honest with you, I always scream like a little girl and run home.
Me too. Well, maybe not run, but walk very briskly. This girl don't run. 2 weeks after that attack, police were called to the scene of another car that had been attacked, not too far from the swamp. The fenders had been ripped off and the antenna was bent. There was also deep scratches on the body, and get this, it looked like the chrome had been chewed right off of the car. All through the summer, there were more and more reports of cars being vandalized, and people reported seeing a large green, scaly, humanoid type being lurking around in the woods and the swamp. The sheriff even made plaster cast of the three-toed footprints, but they never did anything with it. They didn't call in the FBI to investigate it any further. So when the weather started cooling off here in South Carolina, there was no more incidents reported that year. Maybe he went into brumation like all little good lizards do. But now, in 2015, a woman said that when she was coming out of church, she snapped a picture of the Lizard Man with her cell phone. There's also a video that was taken of him in the swamp. Now, I'm not saying anybody faked anything, because I do believe there's something out there for people to have seen, or so many people to have seen something. But this particular picture, it looks like somebody in a costume. Now, Alex, yesterday I showed you that costume. What did you think about it?
I don't think that's a real photo of the lizard man. That man was in a rubber suit. He looked like a mascot for a restaurant or something. So
Yeah.
That's not him. That's not real.
Yeah, it kind of looked like a really, I mean, it was a high scale costume, but it was not the lizard man. It was a lizard man, but not the lizard man.
Yeah.
So now, lizard man is described as being 7 feet tall. He's got red eyes. He's got skin like a lizard, snake-like scales, and 3 pointy fingers on each paw. He's more attracted to vehicles than he is to humans, so that's good to know. Now, remember in 2017, that summer, we had the big solar eclipse that people was just going crazy for? Well, during that, they were hoping that the lizard man would make another appearance, but he was a no-show. Now, Lizard Man has even been mentioned on national TV by Stephen Colbert, and he happens to be an SC native, and he's the host of The Late Show. You can follow Lizard Man. He's even got like a Twitter account, so you can follow him. His Twitter is at LizardmanSC. But I noticed the other day that the last post that was on his account was in August of last year. Now, personally, I've never seen the Lizard Man, but when my dad was coming through that area during the time of that first sighting, it was all the craze, you know. There was t-shirts that you could buy. So he bought me one, and I think that t-shirt said something like, "I ain't afraid of no lizard man." Now, I guess maybe they were kind of spinning that off of that "I ain't afraid of no ghost" from Ghostbusters, because that was all around the same time. Now, these days, he does have a festival in his honor. And last year, because of COVID-19, they had the festival only online. Now, Alex, maybe this year we should skip going to the Party in the Pines and just go to the Lizard Man Festival. What you think?
We're going to see a man in a rubber costume again. Let's go do that. I want to go see the lizard man in a rubber costume.
Exactly. Alright, so that's really all I got about him. But let's move on to the Boo Hags. And this is the one I had never heard of. So, Boo Hags, they're like described as skinless beings that are bright red in color with bulging veins, and they creep into people's homes in the low country through the smallest of cracks. They climb onto their chests while the people are sleeping, and they gain their strength through sucking out their breath and energy, and have also been known to tear the skin off of their victims and wear it to keep warm. That's just creepy. I feel like if it were me, if somebody was ripping my skin off, I probably would wake up in the middle of it, but okay. Now, the origin of the Boo Hag is traced back to the Gullah folklore, and according to the Gullah people, a person would become a Boo Hag if they died and their soul didn't go to heaven because of the bad things they'd done in the past. Now, if you live in the low country of South Carolina and wake up feeling exhausted, it's probably because a Boo Hag made you its muse in the night and you don't even remember a thing. Now, I wake up most mornings feeling more tired than I was when I went to bed the night before, but hopefully since we live in the upstate, I'm not being visited by a Boo Hag. Now, Boo Hags, they're repelled by the color indigo blue, so according to the Gullah people, you can paint the tops of your window frames indigo blue, and Boo Hags won't be able to get through the window. Now, another way they say you can protect yourself from Boo Hags is you keep a broom with a lot of bristles close by. And this is so that they say that the Boo Hags, they're like fascinated with numbers, and they just can't pass a broom without counting every single bristle on the broom. Now, I mentioned the Gullah people, and you may be familiar with the term Gullah from that popular 1990s show, Gullah Island. But if you're not, I'll tell you a little bit about the Gullah people because they're fascinating. Now, the Gullah culture is predominantly in the Charleston, South Carolina area, but you can find the Gullah women and sometimes the men in the marketplace in Charleston weaving and selling their sweetgrass baskets and their spices. Now, Africans who had been captured and brought to America to be slaves were imprisoned together in large numbers. Through this, they formed the Gullah culture. The people there now are descendants of the slaves brought to the Carolinas in the 1500s. The word Gullah comes from the language that they developed while working in the rice fields. Almost 500,000 Gullahs live on the East Coast from Florida to North Carolina, with the biggest population being on the Sea Islands. The fact that they have stuck around for like 500 years, or over 500 years, really, it says a lot about their strength and their sense of community, and I admire that about them. I know in elementary school, y'all went on a field trip to Charleston. Did the Gullah people, were they ever like mentioned, or did y'all see them, or?
I haven't heard them. We haven't heard about any of that when I was there, so I have
Oh, so y'all didn't, that wasn't part of the field trip?
It was not.
Okay. Well, now, not too far from Charleston, kind of between, I believe, just picturing in my mind the map, between Charleston and Myrtle Beach, there's Edisto Island. Now, there's an urban legend that comes from Edisto. Edisto. It's an Edisto urban legend. But it's another South Carolina urban legend that makes my skin crawl, and that's the one of Julia Lagare. Now, the first time I had ever heard of her story, I think it was on a show on the Travel Channel. Now, Julia was the young daughter of an affluent family on Edisto Island when she became ill. Now, some stories say she lived on Edisto, and others say that she was just visiting family there when she became sick. Because I kind of found like conflicting information on that, but that's not all that important to the this whole story. So, anyway, she slipped into a coma, and her family kept waiting for the day that she would wake up. Now, back in those days, medical technology was not like it is today, so the doctor pronounced her dead. So, after the doctor pronounced her dead, they dressed her for her funeral so that her family could say their goodbyes. Now, you also have to understand that back in those days, they didn't use embalming fluid to preserve the body, so funerals had to take place very fast. So, she was buried in her family's mausoleum the same day that she was pronounced dead. Now, if you don't know what a mausoleum is, it's kind of like a little concrete or cement building, about the size of like the storage buildings people have in their backyard, maybe a little bit bigger, and it's room for several family members to be not buried, because they don't put you in the ground, but I don't know really the word for it, but they put your casket, I guess, in there, and that's where your body spends eternity. Okay, but anyway, after she was placed in there, they closed the door and they locked it. Now, 15 years later, when another family member died, they opened the mausoleum and they realized they had made a very big mistake, because laying crumpled at the foot of the door was Julia's remains. Now, on the back of the door was claw marks where poor Julia had tried to scratch her way out. Now, it's thought that her respiratory rate and her heart rates had dropped so low while she was in that coma that it was undetected, and that led the doctor to believe that she was dead. So the shocking realization of that was that Julia had woken up from her coma, but she was unable to escape, and she had to agonizingly await her own death. Now, I can't even imagine being locked in there, hoping someone would hear me screaming or banging on the door, and then knowing you're gonna die in there. And I keep thinking too about, I'm sure she got hungry. Food food is my thing, okay? And I just can't even imagine having to probably starve to death, but anyway, bless her heart. So anyway, so she was buried for a second time along with the loved one whose death led to the discovery of Julia's fate, and the door was sealed shut again. Now, when the family they were still in shock and grieving again for their daughter being buried, not once, but twice, they returned to the cemetery to pay their respects